You're listening to Mr. Credit on San Diego 1700 with local credit expert Derek Evans. Now, live in studio, Mr. Credit.
Welcome to Mr. Credit. We are live and local here in San Diego, bringing you the most important hour in radio and telling you everything they don't want you to know. It's hard not to know unless you're away from a computer right now, but the Dow Jones Industrial Average was down more than 800 points at one point today. Now, I'm not a financial advisor, but I can tell you something to screw you there. We're going to talk about that here in a second. We're also going to be talking about having a good mix of credit. I'm going to let you know precisely what you need to have in order to have the perfect mix of credit to make sure that your credit score is as high as it should be. I'm going to get to your emails too. I have to apologize. I haven't been able to get to those. Most of these shows, 1 hour is just not enough to get you all the information you need to know so that you can achieve your maximum credit score. But I will get to those a little later today. We're also going to talk about the importance of secured cards in this environment and how that's really the only way you can have any insurance for your credit. But first, I need to give a shout out, a quick thank you to Bridgepoint Ashford University. They are an online college that has 4,000 or 5,000 employees here in San Diego, so a very big contributor to the economy here locally. And the last couple of days we've been rebroadcasting because I was doing some lunch and learns over there. And, you know, it's amazing. It's, you know, on radio I don't get the feedback right away, but when you're talking to people face-to-face and hearing the questions that they have, it just really opens your eyes up to some of the things that people don't realize. And no one really understands the way these bureaus are set up. These credit bureaus are not set up to protect you. Everyone thinks that they're there to keep a watchful eye over your credit report for you, and that is just not how it works. The credit bureaus are businesses. They're businesses, for-profit businesses, and they're only interested in making a profit. That's all they care about. They don't even validate the information that the creditors report to them. I mean, if the creditor reports something to the bureau, they just slap it on your credit report. They don't even ask them why or how can they prove that that's the case. They don't even ask them to verify it in any way. So, you know, it's just amazing to meet with people, and I really want to thank everyone over there, especially Jennifer Jung, for giving me that opportunity. Now, I'm not a finance guy. I do try to help people as much as I can with their finances, but I've been saying this market is rigged. You know, the level of corruption and greed that exists on the government level in many cases, the financial world especially, the banks, the bureaus, it'll blow your mind off. Today, we're seeing something that is truly scary. Now, the Dow Jones was down more than 800 points at one point today. It's now down about 400 points, which is about 4%. It was down about 8% at one point. For one single day, that is a significant amount. I mean, we're talking about billions and billions of dollars being lost today in the markets. Now, I'm reading through the news lines. I'm trying to figure out, hey, why is this happening? I mean, did 9/11 happen? I mean, why is the market down so much? And all I'm seeing is stuff like this. You know, stocks sell off sharply Thursday, extending the recent downturn as investors continued worry that Europe's debt problems will cause more problems in our economy. Are you kidding me? The debt problems that Europe has? What about the debt problems that we have? The debt problems that we have are much scarier than anything you're going to see in Europe, and that's not news anyway. So what else we got here? Henry Paulson, former Treasury Secretary, who led the Bush administration's response to the 2008 financial crisis on Thursday, endorsed calls for greater scrutiny in financial and regulation of the financial industries. Is that the reason that the market's going crazy? Because everybody's afraid of the regulation involved in that industry? Does that not just tip your hat a little bit to the fact that maybe there is some corruption going on there and people are getting out of Dodge? They're moving on because they realize that they're going to get in trouble if they don't? Why else would the market be down this much if it were a real market? It's not a real market. There's a couple things we have to understand about it. The way that the government is tied to the market, the way that the government is tied to the banks, and the way that the government is indirectly now linked to the credit bureaus through the banks. And the government is supplying money to the banks to lend to people to try to keep commerce flowing. But they can't do it forever. They have to call in the markers. When they call in their markers, as they're doing with mortgage rates right now in the mortgage-backed security market, when they call those markers in, they have to get the money back. Then it's got to be capitulated, meaning that whoever had it out there investing must recoup it so they can pay them back. And as the government, who is broker than broke, you wouldn't believe it, needs to get money back, they're going to continue to have to call in these markers. And that's just going to strip money out of the markets in every possible way. Now, I don't know if anybody has had the census guy visit their home recently, but I got that visit last night. It was only 10 minutes. Obviously, it's an important thing to do. But that was a big part of what they were saying with the employment numbers. So when we look at these markets and we see these things, we've got to realize that, there's some stuff out there that we just can't be in control of. There's nothing we can do about it. But we've got to figure out the best way to strategize. Now, I've been in cash for a long time because I don't believe in the stock market anymore. Burn me once, shame on me, burn me twice, or shame on you, or whatever that is. And, the thing is with the markets is that there are people who know more than you do. And there are people who are making money today even though the market's down because they knew the market would go down. And that's the type of corruption I'm talking about. How does it exist at the bureau level? An amazing report that I'm going to read to you tomorrow about how the bureaus used to spend almost $5 per dispute. So if something was on your credit report, it was wrong, you sent them a letter. There was someone here in America who actually spoke English who would get that letter, read it, comprehend it. They'd spend about half an hour on it. Somebody getting paid $10 an hour, $5. Okay, approximately. That's what their cost was. Now that they're outsourcing this stuff to India and the Philippines, etc., what happens is you send the dispute in, whatever it is, hey, this is wrong on my credit report, please fix it. They take that, scan it here in the United States, and then email it, no joke, to one of these offshore companies that they're subsidizing these things to. They are now spending around 50 cents per dispute instead of $5. 50 cents because they prefer, even though they make hundreds of millions of dollars every quarter, they prefer to make more money and have your information that's important to you, the most important aspect of your financial life that you're trying to get fixed, that they are required by law to make sure it gets done in a reasonable fashion. They would rather send that to someone who doesn't even speak the language because they can make a buck. Now, I'm not a guy who's trying to trash the free market. I'm really not. I believe that obviously business needs to be there and big business needs to be there, but there comes a time and there is a point where you have to draw a line with the level of greed that's involved and the service levels. The credit bureaus, even though there's 3 of them, which is their argument that it's not a monopoly, they're all doing the exact same thing. They mirror one another. And I wouldn't be surprised one bit if they have closed-door meetings where they get and create policies amongst one another. Wouldn't surprise me one bit because you don't have a choice. The creditors are going to send your information to the bureaus whether you like it or not. And you are going to have a credit report whether you like it or not. And they're going to sell your information to make money whether you like it or not. But you can prevent them from doing that by going to optoutprescreen.com. Now, the most important thing to take in today is to realize the gravity of the situation that we're in. Things are going to be changing significantly. Why is this important? Why am I talking about the financial markets? This is the reason. Because right now, even though we've had all this stuff, lending industry, the housing crisis, crazy financial collapse, and then immediate rebuild, we've gone through all of this and really have kind of skipped over the whole credit thing. I mean, you can still buy a home if you have a 620 credit score. And let me tell you, 620 is D-level credit. You know that 720 is where you want to be. That's the median score in this country. Half the people are above it, half the people are below. You want to be above it. You know that because you listen to this show. A lot of people don't. People are out there buying homes with 620 credit. Doesn't make any sense to me. But the reason they're able to do it is because the government is pumping the money into the banks. The government pumps the money into the banks. The banks try to find any way that they can to lend it. The FHA, which is a government program who's allowing you to buy a home at 620, doesn't even have a credit score restriction at all. If you meet their criteria, you can buy a home no matter what, but the banks are putting an overlay at 620, and that's why that's the minimum score. At the same time, they're lending out millions and millions of dollars every day, probably billions, to people who aren't necessarily creditworthy, and that is going to stop. You see, when the government calls their markers in, when the financial markets catch up to itself, it was a dreamland at 11,000. That's absolutely ridiculous. Maybe the market should be 8,000, 9,000, something like that. That would make sense. But 11,000 was crazy. When this money comes back in, what's going to happen? What's going to happen is the banks are then going to have to go back to traditional banking standards of lending their deposit money. And they're going to be doing it with much less leverage than they were able to before. So when that happens, what are they going to do? They can't lend as much money, so who are they going to lend it to? They're going to make the cutoff much higher.